Hello everyone, this is our project for computer networks. So our team consists of three members led by Sandipan Das, me, the Sharnav Dash, and Jayavardhan Rathi. Together we have built a chat application which enables users to create anonymous rooms and chat with each other securely over the internet. It follows the general client-server architecture over TCP/IP protocol. Now, what's the tech stack that we are using? So we have a full stack tech stack that's using front end, and the front end uses HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript. Our backend uses Node.js and Socket.io. So Socket.io is a JavaScript library for real-time web applications. It enables real-time bidirectional communication between web clients and servers. It has two parts: a client-side library that runs in the browser and a server-side library for Node.js. Both components have a nearly identical API. Now, what is our project all about? It's about a chat application that's built on a full stack application, which uses the front end and the back end. It features live chat rooms, also features live typing indication, and it also allows multiple users to interact in a room with each other. Now, what's the use of making a chat application? A chat application uh, has some engaging messaging features. It helps us scaling up the business, operating reliably in real time. It ensures security, increases the in-app chat engagement, and also the instant messaging with the right people without the hassle of creating groups. Now, I would like to ask my teammate Sandipan to continue with the explanation of what we have done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shornaba. I'll be going ahead with the explanation of the project. As you can see, we'll start off with a basic demonstration of our entire project. The project here, as you can see, it's hosted live on Heroku. There's a basic front end right here, and I'll be showing you a demo right now. So here's an option to enter my name. So let's enter the name, and there's an option to choose a room for ourselves. So I'll be entering myself in room Node.js, and to simulate multiple people, and I'll be creating another duplicate chat room where I'll be entering with a different name. So once I enter here, you can see on the right hand side is it shows up on my Sandipan's profile that SD1 has joined. This is all a part of the application itself, and right now you can see it's showing in live how many users are there inside the room. So let's go ahead and showcase the chat part of the application. As you can see, I just sent a message from my side as from Sandipan, and let's go ahead to the SD1, and you can see that a message has been received from Sandipan's end with the real time actual time when it was received, and let's go ahead and send a message back. So once we sent a message back, you can see it's bidirectional since Socket.io does that job. That SD1, I've received a message on Sandipan's end that's from SD1. So once I leave the room, it will show me that in the real time that Sandipan has left the chat. That is also an application of the project. So moving on, I'll showcase the entire code base of the project. The code base is majorly divided into two basic categories: the server JS, which is the server side of the code, and the client JS, which is located in this public folder, as you can see, the main JS. Because since Socket.io requires the server client infrastructure, we have to proceed with this model for our entire project. So moving ahead, for the server, we have a few major dependencies. Basically, we are using Express.js with Node for the as our framework for development. We are using Moment.js to showcase the real time that we just saw before, and Socket.io establishes the bidirectional communication for real time interfaces. So moving on, let me explain about the entire server JS. Here we are starting off with requiring Express, HTTP, and Socket.io, which are basic modules necessary to kickstart our application. Creating a basic server here, what this line is doing is basically pointing the front end to. Moving on, this line basically makes sure that our public folder contains the CSS, JS, and the index.html, which are the basic front end, and this makes sure that our front end is served from the public folder itself. Moving on, Socket.io features a large number of syntactical notations which make sure that our clients connect with a valid socket before proceeding with any real-time communication. So io.on with connection event makes sure that and basically listens for a connection on live and make sure that whenever a client connects, whenever a unique client connects on the server, it creates a new, generates a new socket, and from proceeding forward there will be certain functionalities on the socket. So here we what we are doing is we are pushing the user who just entered into a new room through the join room event with the valid username and room, which will be accepting from the client end. Also, the socket.join join is an inbuilt functionality provided by socket.io, which makes sure that an user is only restricted to a specific room at a time. This you can think of it as encapsulation in OOPS. Moving on, the socket.to functionality makes sure that whatever messages will be entering the will become entering to any user will be restricted to a given room itself with the emit functionality, which actually facilitates the messaging part. Also, the socket.broadcast functionality, here what we're doing is we are letting everyone inside a room know except the sender itself that a given user has joined the chat. Remember, I just showed you where Sandeepan has joined the chat, and so this line is what does the job. Also, the start type functionality, we have already seen in WhatsApp that there is a functionality where a user is typing, we can see it live or when a user is typing. So these lines does that job. The start type event makes sure that whenever a user is typing, this gets triggered, and on inside the given room, and the following event is message is triggered that a user is typing with the specific username, of course. And after a 2-second interval period, if a user is not typing anything, the message will automatically be removed that user is not typing, or basically a blank message. Finally, the io.to function here will convey all the user details which we just saw here. These user details, as you can see here, are conveyed by this line here with the room and the total number of users in a predefined fashion. And for the actual bidirectional communication, we have an on event. On basically listens for new messages from any user. Or this is a common place for listening for messages. It accepts the user details through the socket ID. Socket ID is a unique ID which is generated for every different user who joins the chat. So with that ID we extract the user details, and remember we explained about the to functionality. Using that, we are restricting our message and the actual messaging to a given room itself. Finally, if a user connects, he or she will disconnect at some point of time, so we have to make sure that we are handling that event too. So the socket.on with the disconnect event make sure that when a user leaves the room with the specific ID, we are removing them from the room itself. Otherwise our chat application will hang and the users will have to restart all over again. So that's all about the server JS. Moving on to the main JS. Main JS is the actual client side of the project. Main.js extracts three major things: the document.getElement by ID, the chat form. The chat form will make sure that this is what a chat form is. The chat form will have the actual messaging details of every user, and the message is the value which is enclosed within the div. This SDF, what we are seeing here, this is the actual value. Chat div and users list are basic structures which will be requiring for our project functionality. Here in this line, what we are doing is we are extracting the username and room using the QS library in Node.js. This makes sure that here, as you can see, there's an URL with the username and room as the attributes. This line exactly what it does. It extracts and stores the username and room using a destructuring, which is seen in ES6 format of JavaScript. Moving on, the socket.emit with join room functionality. Next, the socket.emit event will make sure that we have an on handler on the server side, which we talked about before. This emit event will be triggering the join room where a user will be pushed to an existing room with the username and room, which is just extracted from the URL. Also, we have an on handler which will format and print out all the room users in real time on the front end. The output room users is defined right here. So this takes in the document.getElement ID with the room name div, which is defined on our front end, and it pushes the room name as an inner HTML inside the div. Also, users list is a unordered list which has been defined on our front end, and we are basically iterating over all the users and pushing creating a new user item for every user item and pushing it into our user list, which shows up on our front end. Up next, we have an event listener, that which actually triggers when a user clicks on submit event, when to communicate with each other. Whenever the submit event is triggered, whatever is actually the e.prevent default makes sure that whatever is present inside the chat form itself gets removed before processing any new input. Now what we are doing is we are emitting a chat message event with the message.value as the actual text content of the form which we talked about right now. And once the text has been sent, we reformat everything and make sure that the our text field is totally clean for the next message. Finally, we also have a socket.on with the message event. Like, since it's bi-directional, remember, so for every emit event there has to be an on event, right? So every time a user sends a message, he or she has to expect a reply. So the on functionality handles that job, and whenever someone else sends a message, it gets handled here, and it shows up using the display message function defined here. This is a simple HTML manipulation, which is very much similar to our output room users which we talked about. And finally, we have our on key function. This functionality is defined by the WhatsApp feature which we talked about, where a user is typing where is indicated in real time. So this makes sure that whenever when the key press event is triggered, we send out a start type event which we talked about on the server JS, and with the current username as the payload. And after a timeout of 2 seconds, if the key press event is not triggered anymore, we'll send out a stop type event with a blank message to make sure that our username is removed. So that is all about our project. Now Jayavardhan will be moving on with the basic conclusion.
Okay, so I will go over the individual roles of each of our teammates with regard to the project in context. So Sandeepan worked on building out the server side of the application backend. Shornaba worked on handling the client side of the backend, and I worked on bootstrapping the entire project together with the front end. That's all about our application. Hope you enjoyed it. And
So thank you Jayavardhan for that conclusion. So hope you enjoyed our project. Bye.